So let's talk about The Flash. When I say let's talk, it pretty much means I'm going to talk about The Flash because that's how this goes. But you can leave comments. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave comments. Feel free. We can have a discussion that way. So The Flash. So The Flash is the latest DC film, the DC universe. You know, you got your superhero movies, about one a week. You've got your DC films, you got your Marvel films. When I was a youth, DC movies were great. When I was a kid, DC movies, we say plural. You had the Superman films, and then a little bit later you had the Batman films, and that was pretty much it. But they were pretty solid as a youth. Each series, I think, went boom real hard. But anyway, and then Marvel came along. Marvel had a lot of TV stuff. DC had Wonder Woman on TV and Batman, and Marvel had, well, very briefly, Spider-Man. Marvel had the Incredible Hulk. So you had a little of that going on back then. Anyway, these days, Marvel is where it's at. Marvel is pumping them out. Marvel is a juggernaut of a franchise. And DC, to me, has sort of limped along in their shadow. DC always feels like it's running breathlessly trying to catch up. And initially, that's what I thought The Flash was going to be. When I saw the trailers for The Flash, not necessarily, okay, Ezra Miller, we'll get into this a little bit. Ezra Miller has had personal issues. Ezra Miller has had a hard time in the public eye with the law and people, and maybe he's a terrible person, maybe he's misunderstood. I don't really know, and I don't particularly care. I don't love Ezra Miller as an actor. I think Ezra Miller can be okay, but it's not somebody who really makes me say, "Ooh, Ezra Miller's in that. I got to go see it." The portrayal of Barry Allen as the Flash, also minimally controversial in fan circles because there has been, or was recently, a Flash TV series that was very popular. A lot of people kind of wish that Flash went into the movies. Hate to break it to you, that almost never happens. People who play a character on TV, they rarely translate that to the movies. They want bigger names, and they want to. TVs is cheap. It's a thing. So your dreams are dashed if you think the woman who played Supergirl on the Supergirl TV series is going to be in any movies, and vice versa. It just doesn't tend to work that way for whatever reason. So Ezra Miller as the Flash, I didn't really love the character. I don't really love the whole idiot as superhero thing. Once in a great while that works, but overall I'm like, I want a hero I can look up to. I grew up with the Christopher Reeve Superman, and the Christopher Reeve Superman was the kind of person you hoped one day you might be. It was somebody that led an example. And at some point in our culture, it became more about, well, I can relate to that person because they're a screw up, or at least I'm better than that guy. And I don't really like entertainment like that. Once in a great while, but all the time, no. I don't need a flawed hero. I want somebody to aspire to be like. So eventually I will talk about this movie. So the Ezra Miller Flash in the other films was amusing. The costume looked a little weird. And when I saw the trailer for this new movie entitled The Flash, which is The Flash's first feature film, it didn't look great to me, and it gave away too much. Like, every movie, every surprise that happens within the context of a film storyline ideally should be a surprise to the audience when they're watching it for the first time. But unfortunately, studios spend so much money on movies that they are white-hot panicked that somebody might not understand what the movie's about, or they might not want to go see it. So I'm not going to get into the plot too much here. And you all know what it is already, but I'm going to be the guy who doesn't give things away should you watch The Flash kind of blind for the first time. Because I will say, when I went to see Spider-Man No Way Home, there's a gigantic twist in that film that mostly was not advertised, which I thought was cool. But people can't shut up on the internet, so it was everywhere, and I kind of find out about it ahead of time, or had a really strong inkling. A lot of the audience didn't know, and it was like an excitement bomb went off in that theater. It was amazing to experience when that twist happened in that Spider-Man movie. I wish people could have had that experience with this Flash movie. So the basic premise here is that Barry Allen is the Flash. He's a young, goofy guy trying to make his way, working at Star Labs, trying to help crack cases, from the inside scientifically. He can run real fast, and he can do amazing things because he can vibrate very quickly, or he can run really fast and all this stuff. And film opens with a spectacular disaster where he's working with the Ben Affleck Batman to thwart multiple things going on in Gotham City at the same time. And there's a huge earthquake that's happening. Something's happening. It's swallowing up the earth underneath a hospital, and hundreds of people are in peril, and the Flash has to move really quick to save them. It's done with a lot of sense of humor. One aspect of what happens is so ridiculous and kind of hilarious, and kind of in extremely poor taste. I wasn't quite sure what to make of it. Like, I was laughing. This movie is pretty funny. And I will say up front, because I'm going to keep rambling about this for a while, I did enjoy this. I had some problems with it, but overall I thought this was fun. And I went in thinking this is going to be bad. So I went in, honestly, I went into this movie so that I could do this review, so that I would have something to talk about and keep the review train going. And I had a good time with it. So there's this weird thing at the beginning. There's some really dodgy CGI in this movie. I mean, really dodgy CGI in this movie, like really, really bad. And there's a sequence where people are falling and people are falling out of this building. Again, I'm not going to spoil things for you. And they look so fake, it wildly took me out of the movie. Like, are those not supposed to be real people? It really kind of hurt the film. But it was a fun opening action sequence that sort of gives you a sense of who the Flash is, if you don't know. And you get a little Batman stuff and some other cameos. And it's fun. It's just fun. So something happens where Barry Allen, who is our lead, his mother died. Part of the backstory is his mother was killed. His father was blamed for it. And at the beginning of the movie, he's trying to help his father clear his name. And he gets so upset the fact that his mother is dead and he thinks there's nothing that he can do and he's lost his father because his father's in prison for this, that he runs so fast he goes back in time briefly. He then decides, wow, maybe if I do this again, I can go back and change something that will make it so that my mother never died. He does that, and then if you've seen enough time travel movies, the butterfly effect, it changes a lot of things. So the rest of the movie is spent with him trying to get back to the future, as it were, and clearly, this is another issue I have with modern screenwriting. Way back when, screenwriters had lived a life. They had been in wars, they had been journalists, they had lived an elite life, they had gone to college, they had done all kinds of things, and they had read great literature, and they had lived life, and they drew from that to make movies. For the last 20 or 30 years, it seems like most screenwriters simply have watched the biggest films of all time over and over and over again, and we just get that regurgitated back over and over and over again. So there are heavy elements of Back to the Future in this, down to them repeatedly referencing Back to the Future in this. I did hear from a friend that there are 2 episodes, season 3, early in season 3 of the Flash TV show, that essentially tell the same story. So maybe I'm just reading too much into it, but so... I'll give you one little thing here because it ties into what I'm going to talk about. Yes, there's a huge cameo they totally made this movie about. The ad campaign for this Flash film is almost more about this cameo and guest star than it is about the Flash itself. And it's heavy fan service. That person is great. It is great to see that character and that person again. The way they do it is great and arguably in some ways better than they did it the first time around. But it's the kind of thing that would have blown people's minds if they had seen this film without that being right at the forefront of the ad campaign. So when Barry Allen goes back in time and fixes things, when he comes back, he doesn't come back far enough, and he basically is back a few years before he should be, and he runs into the alt-universe version of himself. So you have 2 Barry Allens in this film, and the alt-universe version of himself, who didn't have to deal with a mother who died early, is just an idiot. He's just a spoiled idiot. And that's kind of funny, but after a while it gets extremely grating because he's just a dummy, and you're like, okay, yeah, he's a dummy, but man, he's annoying. So you've got that going on. That's not really what I wanted to talk about. None of this was. That was all a ruse to talk about something else. No, the dodgy CGI. You often will see movies where the effects are bad and the apologists leap out and say, it was rushed. They didn't have time to finish it. The studio already had a release date. Studios, not that you're listening to me, but please, in the cosmic sense, how about you release a movie when it's done? How about when it's done, then you decide when it's going to come out, and not this, we've set a release date 3 years in the future, we've already announced it, everything is hinging on this, and you put out something that's garbage. How about you just wait until it's done? The world will wait. The world already waited a while for this Flash movie. It would have been okay to wait a little bit longer, because guess what? If this Flash movie doesn't come out, there's going to be 5 other superhero movies that are clogging the marketplace for the next 5 months. So, which is not to say I didn't enjoy this film. The CGI in some areas is really distracting. The aforementioned action scene at the beginning, the people looked like CGI. There's a thing where Barry Allen, the Flash, goes into this like limbo of time travel, and it's almost like he's in an arena, and each circle of seating is a row of people from his past replicated. It looks like the Lawnmower Man. It looks like a video game from years ago. It really is distracting, and maybe somebody will say that was the effect they were going for, but it looked really not good. There were times where they did the two Barry Allens. Back to the Future 2 was more than 30 years ago. I think effects should get better over time, especially when studios are spending so much money on them, and watch the credits of any movie. It's just hundreds of names going by working on stuff. How did two Michael J. Foxes in 1989 or 90 look way better than two Ezra Millers in 2023? There are times where they use like deep fake technology or CGI face replacement, and if you're not looking at whoever's in front, it looks really distracting. I saw this in IMAX. I will say too, if you see this in IMAX, it's formatted for IMAX, so it actually fills the IMAX screen. A lot of times IMAX is really just used to charge a little bit more money and play a movie on a bigger screen than normal, and it's in whatever aspect ratio it is, but occasionally they will shoot a film or format it so that it works in IMAX. This one does that. There were times where there were close-ups. So I'm like, okay, I get it. If it's supposed to be two of him and you're having to do digital things to put his face on somebody else's body, that's what you have to do. That's how it works. But there were times where it was a single shot and Ezra Miller's talking and it's a CGI mouth or face, and I'm like, so you were able to get him into loop dialogue but not actually point a camera at his face? It's really distracting. And again, in IMAX, it's right in your face that it's that distracting. So again, I don't want to give away too much, but we get a lot of other superheroes in this film, and some are the actors you recognize, some are surprises, and some are people who are new. Everybody's good, you know. We get back Michael Shannon from The Man of Steel as General Zod. I didn't like Man of Steel, so I don't really have any memory or care about that. I like Michael Shannon. He's great. There were times where his face looked CGI and really weird and dodgy. Some really good action, some really creative action, some really good effects in this, I will say, too. It's just that there were times where the CGI looked really bad, and it was distracting, and I'm just like, what did you spend on this? So, and I also will say, you have banks of people, teams of people around the world. You've got multiple countries. You look at the end, there's always like 5 countries listed as to where it was shot and where the tax breaks came from and all that. How did the practical effects guys in the 70s and 80s, who were like 4 guys with just cameras and miniatures, do stuff that was more believable than hundreds of people with computers? If CGI ain't there, don't use it. Come on. Says he who doesn't make movies. I realize the movie was fun. It was funny, poor taste a couple times, a little profanity here and there, which was surprising. There is the credits will start, and then there's another scene, mid-credit sequence, that's very funny and had me and a lot of people laughing out loud and cheering. There is a post-credit sequence that is absolutely not worth waiting for. Everybody will, because you want to see it, no matter what anybody says. It's not worth it. Leave. People will stay and watch it, and then you will say, that was stupid and pointless. It really only existed to get another DC person in the film. So this may have been based on comics. This may have been based on a storyline that was in the Flash TV show. But like I said earlier about DC, it always feels like DC going, Avengers, we've got an all-star team too. And we can do a multiverse too. And we can do a movie where we bring back other actors who played a character a long time ago too. And it's like, yeah, but you're not doing it as well as Marvel is. So anyway, and having said all that, I read more DC comics than I did Marvel growing up. You know, I bought the occasional Wonder Woman and Batman and Superman and Flash and Green Lantern and Swamp Thing I was huge into. So I was really more of a DC kid. It's something about the DC movies. They're all either too dark or too dumb or way overblown and way too much CGI. It's just like, it's all like the most. Like even the costumes generally kind of look pretty dumb. But having said all of that, having wasted your time for this long, The Flash is fun. say what you will about Ezra Miller. Some people don't want to see it. They don't like him. Some are morally opposed to the offenses he's committed and all that. I don't care. I just want to go see a fun movie. I thought it was a fun movie. I do have to wonder though, with Ezra Miller's bad press, shall we say, if that is going to make Warner Brothers have to think hard, if this is a big success, what to do about more Flash films. I think, personally, I don't get into celebrity gossip and all that yellow journalism. I think audiences don't care. They don't remember. If the movie's good, they're going to go see the person in a movie again. So anyway, in theaters now, I would suggest seeing this in a theater. I get choked up when I talk about DC films. I would suggest seeing this in a theater if you are even slightly curious. See it at a matinee. See it somewhere where it's cheap. And have fun, because it is a fun movie. It is a visual spectacle, and I just wish it was a little bit better in some areas. The Flash!